Hello.
Hi.
You okay?
Yeah, you.
Yeah. See, it's February. It like everything is, everything changes in February. It's a game changer.
It was light this morning at 7:30 when I got up,
Yeah.
and I was
Mm,
like, what is
yeah.
this?
I know. It makes a
It's
big
light
difference.
outside.
Yeah.
But I am
Yeah.
still
Seasonally sad.
seasonally sad. Yeah. Anyway,
Ah,
how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Um, I was so excited to get to the end of January and then you get to February and you're like, oh, it's still winter.
Yeah.
But yeah, just getting on with it really. Been practicing my Ilya Rozanov accent because I've now finished watching Heated Rivalry.
Oh, okay. I still haven't seen it.
No, and I have turned into a teenage girl. I'm
Oh,
just obsessed. I was like scrolling, looking for pictures of them yesterday, looking for interviews of them.
can
And I
you
was just,
imagine if we were teenagers and
oh,
that kind of stuff existed? What a different world it
I
would be.
know, like Jordan Catalano, he would have had a big following
Oh my
on
gosh, yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, apart from that, just been I got my edits in recently. Did I get them in recently? Yeah, I did. Oh, I shared the cover, didn't I? Have we done all of that? Yeah, it's been
Yeah,
ages
you
since
shared
that
the
happened.
cover. Yeah.
Gosh, yeah. Otherwise, I've been reading this lovely book that I get one every year, the Almanac. Have you come across it?
Oh, I've seen them.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. You should get one. You'd really like it. It's a seasonal guide to 2026, so there's one every year. And the author is called Leah Lindertz, and it's obviously covers every month, and it's got all of the tides in it, and the moon when it's a full moon and when it's a waxing moon and all that. But it's also got some woodland tales and moonlight gardening and all this sort of stuff. It's really,
Oh,
really nice. And I'm just trying to be a bit more tuned in with all of that stuff that's going on outside in the
yeah,
world.
me too,
Makes you feel better.
It does. And I don't know if it's our age. I
Mm,
don't know if it's because
the world.
we have an inner rage that is like burning really hot and it feels like that's a good way to, I don't know,
Yeah.
calm down a bit.
Yeah.
um, yeah, agreed. I um did in bulk. In bulk? I'm
Oh,
probably
yes.
saying that
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
So, because I'm Irish heritage, so I've always heard about Saint Bridget or
Hmm.
Saint Bridget with a D, and the cross that you make, and you see it everywhere. And like, I think as kids, we probably made them, and
Mm,
you weave a cross. But all of my nephews and nieces in Ireland tend to do it.
mm.
And so this year I had a proper look, and I felt like I was seeing it everywhere. And I know
Yeah.
like algorithms, whatever, and I've probably looked it up once and then it's everywhere. But it was really just kind of popping up everywhere. So I thought, oh, okay. And I had a little read. And I've got a witch's yearbook that I've dipped in and out of for years and I've never really done anything. And then
You got me the same one. I've got it
I did,
too.
didn't I? Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And so I thought, right, okay, it's the start of the year
Mm,
in like olden timey
yeah.
in like pagan ways or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it was the
Mm,
old start of the year. And it feels like a bit more of a start of a year because like I've just seen daffodils on my little walk and things like
yeah.
that. Or they're peeking up anyway.
Mm.
And so I did it. So you leave a cloth or in the olden days it would have been your best shawl or something like that, and you leave it outside overnight, and if St Bridget walks past she like gives it a little tap and she imbues it with healing and like good fortune and stuff like that. And I thought, you know what, I could do some of that and it's not going to hurt. So I strung some ribbon up that I've like had lying around, and um one of Lowly's little cloths that I use to like clean her feet when she's muddy because I thought I'll keep that. And
Oh,
if she ever gets a little sore paw,
yeah.
it can be for that. And it's just, I've got it on my
Did you
desk.
not do one for Luke?
Yeah, so we've got a ribbon each. Um, yeah, he got a black one and I got a white one.
Mm.
But I just set up a little thing on my desk with some candles and some tulips and some daffodils and my little ribbon and a crystal that my sister had bought me years ago for productivity. And I sat down to do some writing and I immediately got a migraine and had to go to bed.
So that went well.
Like immediately. But I took my little ribbon to bed and I pressed it on my head because apparently that is the whole like St. Bridget thing was a big thing about headaches. And I fell asleep and I woke up and I felt better. So
You
who
just have to
knows?
walk around with it wrapped around your head.
Yeah, I did have a little bit tied on my watch, but it kept falling off. So
Yeah,
I've just got it just in case I need it. So
yeah.
yeah, so I was reading that. And then I have also got a proof
Ooh.
of Drop Dead Famous by Jennifer Pearson. So she writes middle grade under Jenny Pearson.
Mm.
And this is her first YA. And the blurb is the world watched global superstar Blair Baker die live on stage. But for her sister Stevie, Blair's murder is more than a headline, and she will stop at nothing to uncover the truth. So, like, when you talk about
Ooh.
high concept thriller, that's like pretty
Yeah.
much up there, isn't it? So, I'm looking forward to getting into that one. Yeah, but today,
Big day.
big day. It's really exciting. And you know what's the most exciting? We didn't invite her on. I know. Her PR, who I've met, lovely Liz, a few times, reached out and said, "Oh, Holly Webb would like to come on." It's like, Holly Webb, why is that name so
Mm.
familiar? And I had a little Google, and it's because I recognised almost every single book she's ever written because when I was a primary school teacher, they were everywhere.
Yeah.
They were just all over. And my niece, who is now nearly 20, I sent her a picture and I was like, "Do you remember these books?" And she was like, "Oh my God, yes." And she used to read them all.
Yeah. That, and when you said to me, I was like gobsmacked because she is like a legend in libraries, like I said to you, and everybody that I work with, who I and they now I do this, and like, oh, we're talking so and so. They're like, oh, that's really cool. And then when I said Holly Webb, they were like, what?
Yeah.
Holly Webb?
But didn't you say you didn't think she was real?
I thought she was like Daisy Meadows. I
Yeah,
mean,
like
don't want to tell her that.
an IP thing.
Yeah.
But no, she's real. Anyway,
Because she's published so many books.
so
So
many.
many. Yeah.
I had a little
Okay.
look on her website. And I think when it was updated last, she said something like 156.
Yeah.
And it has to be more now.
Yeah.
So anyway, we are talking about Holly Webb. So Holly Webb writes for younger children. However, she's here today to talk about The Girl's Guide to Spying. And she started writing when she was working at an editor at a children's publisher. And when I had a little look, it was Scholastic, who were my first publishers. She's now one of Britain's best-loved children's authors. Her books have been translated into 33 languages, and she has sold almost 2 million copies.
Wow. See.
Amazing. Holly joined the Brownies aged 7 and still volunteers as a Brownie and guide leader. Holly lives in Reading with her husband, 3 children, and 2 cats. I'm going to let her in. I'm nervous. Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, hi. Hi,
It was
Holly.
showing up as the video not working for me, so I changed it, and then of course it was just waking up.
Oh, okay. I think it's my setting because it does it to Georgia every time, so I need
Yeah.
to check it. But hi, thank you for coming
Hi.
on. I'm
Hello.
Cynthia,
I'm
Hi.
Georgia. Nice to see you.
and we are very, very excited because we've just been having a chat about your 100 million books that you've written, and how I used to be a primary school teacher. So, of
Yeah.
course, your books were in every single library, and Georgia's a librarian.
Yes.
So
And
we're
I
both
was
really
just-
familiar.
Yeah, I was just saying that I mentioned that I was talking to you at work, and everyone was like, because your books just fly off the shelves. They're in and out all the time. So they're always like on the just back. So everybody like knows your books. So yes, we're very excited. And I have a 9-year-old daughter, so we're working our way through as well. So it's lovely to have you on. We're very excited.
So, Holly, do you want to tell us a little bit about your new book? Because it is slightly different to the ones that we're discussing, isn't it? The ones about puppies and cats and things
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely.
So, yeah.
It is really different. It's something that I've been thinking about writing for ages and ages. So it's a mystery novel, spy novel, but it's also historical fiction, which I really love writing. It's called A Girl's Guide to Spying, and it's inspired by a group of real girl guides who worked as messengers at MI5 during the First World War. So, various government departments recruited both scouts and guides to work as messengers. You had to be 14, um, and they were basically employed to take messages around the MI5 building, but also to different departments of the War Office in London. And they were so trusted that they were sometimes just given verbal messages to carry.
Wow.
And at the end of the war, they'd been so reliable and just good at their job that they were taken to the peace conference in Versailles in Paris. It's to be messengers at the peace conference that ended the war, which obviously was in the end, a very kind of in some ways led to the Second World War. But the amount of trust that was put in these girls was just incredible. And I first found out about them about 10 years ago when a really lovely bookshop team gave me a copy of a book called How the Girl Guides Won the War by Janie Hampton, which had a photograph of these girls at Versailles. And ever since then, I've been thinking, finding out more about them and discovering they were actually known at MI5. They had a kind of company magazine, a sort of internal magazine with comic strips and things in it. And the guides used to get teased for being so good and so perfect. And I just really wanted to bring another side to that, to talk about what their lives were like and what they were experiencing at the time. It's such a frightening time, and just make them real people. And I've really loved doing that. So my guides find a body in the ladies' loo at MI5.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
brilliant. Sold.
And the main character is slightly worried that she actually might have murdered him by accident.
Oh, which of course is an excellent premise to start a book.
I've loved writing it so much.
As soon as you started talking about those guides, I thought, and when you said they had to be 14, I thought I would just immediately want to write a character who was about 12, but being like, oh, I am 14.
Well,
of course.
Phil, the main character's younger sister Annie, is totally furious that she is not allowed to go and join, and does her absolute best to get herself involved in everything.
It just lends itself so perfectly to middle grade, doesn't it? Yeah. Amazing.
And I've actually been a Brownie and guide leader for 29 years. So it's been really lovely to put some of that, not so much my experience, because obviously my guides have thankfully not found any bodies, but to put some of that affection for girl guiding into the story has been really exciting.
Is there a girl guide sort of archive type place? I don't know if you were doing research and things like that. Is there a place?
That is such a vexed question. There is an archive, and girl guiding do have a professional archivist, which is great. But currently, all of the archives are somewhere in Wales, and they're totally inaccessible. You can see very selected bits at the headquarters in London, but not much. And the archivist has been great actually about, if I've asked her questions, but actually most of the archival material I've ended up using has been provided by enthusiasts rather than girl guiding themselves. There are some amazing websites. There's one particular website called Leslie's Guiding History, which has digitized versions of almost all the guiding magazines, which start from kind of almost when girl guiding started in 1910. They started using magazines to communicate with guides and with guide leaders, and they've just been the most amazing resource, those magazines. So I'm hugely grateful for that website.
Well, when you get access to it, or when it reopens, or when it comes back, you'll have to do a sequel. You can go and get your hands on everything. So that leads us quite nicely to, let's go back to the beginning of you as a writer. So I know just from having a look on your website and things like that, that you were a guide, which obviously led you to then work with guides, but also that you started your writing career quite young.
So I didn't I loved reading and writing as a child, and for ages I was absolutely convinced that I was going to be a librarian because I was sure that librarians got to spend their entire life in the library stamping books, which looked great, but also just reading all the books, which various librarians have told me sadly is not nearly as much as I wished it was as a child. And then aged about 10, I was going through this huge murder mystery phase, which I've never really left. But I was reading loads and loads of kind of golden age mysteries, and I found a copy of a Marjorie Allingham book that had a mistake on the back cover. One of the main characters' names was wrong on the back cover, and I was just really confused because I couldn't understand. I was only 10. I didn't really understand the concept of editing, or hadn't kind of worked out that Allingham herself would not have written the blurb on the back cover, given this was a fairly new reissue. And like, how could the author get their own character's name wrong? Um, and so I was talking to my mum about it, and she basically told me about editors, and it was the first time I'd really understood what an editor was. Pretty much from then on, I knew that I wanted to work with books in some way. So I worked as an editor at Scholastic Children's Books, and it was while I was working there that I started writing. But I actually worked there from the age of about 15. I did work experience, and I just kept going back and writing them lovely letters saying how much I'd enjoyed it and could I come back in the next holidays. And then I kind of convinced them to give me a job when I was doing my MA, because the it was round the corner. The offices were round the corner from the Courtauld where I was doing my art history MA, and I managed to convince them to give me an editorial assistant job 1 day a week. Um, yeah, they were very persuadable.
I managed to get them to publish me, so they definitely are.
Exactly. They're lovely, lovely people. So yeah, I started working at Scholastic. And actually, I mean, I was 28 when my first book was published, because I I didn't think I wanted to be a writer. I'd never had any sense that I could be a writer. I loved books, and I loved getting to be part of books, but it was only, well, in fact, the first thing I wrote was for guides, because I was running a guide unit, and I ended up, one of the other leaders, unfortunately, was really unwell. So I was stuck with this guide unit on my own. I had no idea what I was doing with them. And so I wrote a pantomime, so that we could spend the kind of second half of the Christmas term putting on this pantomime. We could do all the scenery and make props, and it would be a way of just giving everybody something to do. And it was such fun writing all these stupid jokes, and then seeing the girls putting this play on was just amazing. And I think that gave me confidence that I wouldn't have otherwise have had. And a couple of years later, uh, we were coming to the end of a series, and that was definitely kind of, it was its time to finish, and was going to leave a hole in the publishing schedule for the next year. So we had a kind of big editorial meeting where we were talking about what we would really like to publish in its place. And we were talking about the ideal kind of book series, the way we could hook readers and make readers feel like they were joining some really special club by reading these books. And I came up with an idea in the meeting about triplet sisters, who would look really identical on the outside, because there's kind of this fascination with twins and triplets,
Yeah.
and identical twins. And because they looked so much the same, everyone would assume they were the same person 3 times over. And the books would be about them kind of developing their own identity and finding out that they were separate people, and learning how to kind of navigate that, while at the same time, tricking people by pretending to be each other and that kind of thing. Um, but I wasn't planning to write it. The idea was that, we talked to some different authors about these different ideas that we'd come up with, and say, look, is this something you feel like you could take away and make your own? But I loved it so much. And I was supposed to be kind of thinking of some possible storylines and fleshing it out a bit before we talked to anybody. And I ended up writing it myself. And I wrote it. So I live in Reading, and I was commuting into London on the train. So I wrote it on my train journeys, the first one. And the trains to Reading to London. Reading is the last stop before Paddington. So I almost always couldn't get a seat. So I ended up writing this first book, sitting on the floor of trains in that bit at the end of the carriage, or sometimes in the luggage rack, um, writing it in an exercise book. And
Oh,
then I realized that I was going to have to tell everybody else because I hadn't told anybody else what I was doing.
Mm.
So I typed it up, and I wasn't actually brave enough to tell them. I printed a copy out and I left it um, on the chair of one of the other editors, who actually, until very, very recently, I've still been working with. So that's 21 years later. So thank goodness she liked it. I don't know what I would have done.
oh,
It's not very good. I really don't know whether I would have kept writing. I hope that I would.
Mm.
But looking back, it was such a crazy decision to make to try and write that book myself. Um, that yeah, I'm really impressed by how brave 20 years ago me was to actually put myself out there, because that's not something
Yeah.
I find easy to do at all.
oh, I love that
And
so
they managed
much.
Mm.
it.
Thank God.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and that was the triplets book.
Yeah, that was the triplet
So
books.
and so then did you then feel more confident to say, well, actually, I think I've got some other things that I'd like to float,
So what happened was that actually publishing, there's you can never ever say anything mean to anyone in publishing, because you will almost always end up working with them again, because editors move around loads. It just seems to be the way it works, particularly in children's publishing. Um, and so Jane, who was the editor who I'd originally left this manuscript on her chair, um, moved not long after to set up the fiction list for Little Tiger Books, who'd mostly until that point been publishing picture books. But they really wanted to start a fiction list. And so Jane had this amazing job of, starting a fiction list from scratch. And she asked me to write for her a kitten book. And that was Lost in the Snow, which is the first of the Animal Stories series. And I feel like I have to say this every time I talk about these books, but at the time it was, we'll do a kitten book, and if that's okay, maybe we'll do a puppy, and then maybe a rabbit, or something like that. And there was no sense that it was going to go on and become a really long running series. And if we had known that, we'd have given it a proper series title, because Animal Stories is, well, I mean, it does what it says in the tin, but it's not like
yeah.
it's not catchy. The 65th book in the series,
Wow.
and that was not intentional.
Mm.
Um, that was so actually the first Lost in the Snow was published in 2006 in the summer, about a month after my twin boys were born. So I can they're about to be 20, so that's nearly 20 years ago.
Yeah, my
Wow.
niece was born in 2006, and that's where I know those books from first, because she read them all. Um, how long are they, if you don't mind me asking,
Each
word count
book
wise?
is 12,000 words.
Okay, which is
Yeah.
quite a challenge. It sounds like it's a short thing and really easy, but to get an entire story into
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I love those books, and people sort of say, "Do you not get tired of writing them?" And my husband has this joke that if I just gave the kitten a sat nav, really the series would probably not exist. But I I love bringing different kind of family elements into the stories, um, and I really love the way they're told, partly from the point of view of a child, and also partly from the kitten or puppy's point of view, which is really it's a really I think it's a really special way of getting children to think about um, responsibility, and how this isn't just a toy, this is a living creature that has
Mm.
emotions and feelings,
Yeah.
and I think that's really special. And I love the way that the books sort of hopefully put that across without being too preachy.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah,
feels really special.
Yeah.
yeah,
And especially when I taught, my last teaching job was 8 and 9 year old
Yeah.
girls, and they are so into animals and how animals feel. And they're
Yeah.
really at that stage of life. Boys as well, but I feel like girls maybe more so earlier. So they love those books because they are just so curious, and they get to read that point of view that obviously you don't access in any other way.
No,
mm,
You know.
and I love kind of looking at the story from the two points of view and trying to work out how an animal would actually think about what's going on. And
Yeah.
yeah, for me, it really works.
Yeah.
I think
I
yeah.
mean, as a pet owner as well, I mean, just last night when we've got a dog called Lowly, and she's just a funny little creature, and she'll make these faces. And we're always just like, I'd love to know just what she's thinking right now in this moment. Is it, oh, that's really interesting? Or is it, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why? What's going on here? um, and yeah, I think everyone has that moment of, I'd love to know what they're thinking for a minute.
just
Mm.
occasionally you get lovely questions sent in by children, and occasionally you get asked what would your superpower be, and talking to animals would be it.
Yeah.
That's what I would really like to have.
Yeah, that's a brilliant one. Yeah, we have devoured those books. We had the mobile library that stops here in the village as well, and they're always on there. And as I said, they're just always on the just back shelves at the library, always. And I know animal stories. Some libraries and some bookshops shelve them by the series name, so they're at
Mm.
the beginning. So animal. So
Oh,
it's, but so for that reason, it's quite a good name for the
mentally clever.
series. Yeah. But there's such, I think when children, because like I said, my daughter's 9, and I remember when she started school, the process of watching her learning to read and
Mm.
falling in love with books was just fascinating. And we obviously did lots of reading at home, but just this incredible thing. It's like a gift that they learn.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, what are we going to read next? And it's lovely when they find something that they can latch on to, and it's gentle and it's familiar in a way as well. That's the thing about these series, they're so comforting
Yeah.
because they are familiar. And just watching her absolutely devour them, that it's so wonderful. And as we keep talking about, it's the National Year of Reading, and it's I bet so many readers started with your books.
I do get lovely messages from
Yeah,
parents sometimes saying, my child, this is the first chapter book my child has actually read by themselves, and
yeah,
which is just wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah, that never gets old, does it, when you get
So
a nice
special.
message?
Mm.
So bring us
Oh.
up to now. We'll come back to your current book. And do you have a little bit of research, or do you have a lot of research that you would like to share?
So, um, I've always had a kind of interest in girl guiding history because I've been a Brownian guide leader for ages. Um, and it's been just so brilliant to have an excuse to do a total deep dive into early girl guiding. And the the I kind of felt that the best way to do it was to partly to look at the magazines that I mentioned before. So there was the Girl Guides Gazette, which was the magazine which I think was originally aimed at leaders, but also guides themselves read it, and it's full of these contributions from guides themselves. So there's poetry, and there are lots of editorial answers to questions about what should I do for this badge, or is this allowed, and that kind of thing, which is just great ways of finding out sort of snippets about what was really going on at the time. And there's also the original Girl Guide handbook, which is called, well, it has a problematic title. It's properly called A Handbook for Girl Guides, but its subtitle is How Girls Can Help to Build Up the Empire.
Oh.
Um, which, yeah, and there is a lot of it that is so much of its time.
Mhm.
apparently it's this tiny little blue book. I have a facsimile edition, which the Girl Guide Association put out a few years ago. And it's quite hard to get hold of originals. Um, but it's it's about this big. Sorry, that's not very good for a podcast, is it? It's a small
We're just
format
both
book.
nodding like, yeah.
It's smaller than the average book.
Yes, small
Yes.
and chunky. And it was affectionately referred to as the Little Blue Muddley because it was written by Agnes Baden-Powell, who was one of the original founders of Girl Guiding. She was Robert Baden-Powell's sister. He was the founder of Scouts. And he asked her to help him kind of come up with a scheme for girls. And it's sort of a rehash of the Scout handbook that had been produced a few years before, but with added bits for young ladies. So it's full of totally random things like life-saving and first aid, and the most kind of, it's almost as if she's speaking to you, and she has very determined opinions. There's this fab quote about first aid that some girls are frightened of blood, and that's absolutely ridiculous, and you just need to get over it. That's okay.
Amazing.
It's really funny, and it's completely bonkers the way it's set out. A modern editor would have an absolute field day with it. You just turn the page and go, well, how does that relate to that? But it's just like this little treasure trove of opinions about what girls should be doing, while at the same time, you kind of have to recognize that girl guiding at the time was utterly disapproved of. There was a very strong sense that these girls were being taught how to do things that were improper, particularly wearing a uniform, and a uniform that didn't involve wearing petticoats, which was, not proper at all, and teaching girls to do things that were seen as being only for boys. And that's been one of the huge pleasures of researching and then writing these books, that there's these girls are change makers, and I love that. I love getting to be kind of almost in on the ground with these girls who are filling roles that are would have been so much associated at the time with men. And starting to think about how fragile those roles were, and how at risk women were in the workplace at the time. That was been one of the most kind of almost terrifying realizations writing this book, that that girls were so that their lives and their existence in some ways in a workplace was really, really dangerous. I've mentioned that the girls find a body in the ladies' toilet, and the ladies' loo is kind of a point of a problem throughout the book, that there's only one ladies' toilet at MI5. Over half the staff by that point, because they were running this amazing, if you think obviously it's pre-computers, they had a huge card registry, which was for tracking suspicious people. Thousands and thousands of cards, all stored in a kind of like an old-fashioned library card system. And the clerks who ran the registry were all women. And so there were a large number of women working at MI5, but they were still regarded as obviously not as important as the men, and facilities would not have been provided for them in the same way. And so they're constantly having to kind of go and the ladies' loo ends up being out of order because the murderer has stashed the body in the cupboard and then put up a sign saying it's out of order and there's this terrible smell and nobody knows quite what's going on. But that was something that came out of research, because in the kind of end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, there was a concept, and what I haven't been able to find out is when it became called this, but it's referred to as the urinary leash, which was basically you couldn't leave the house because there was nowhere to go to the loo. So it was only
Oh,
with the advent of department stores that there started to be places where women could safely go to the toilet. And
wow.
if you can't be out of the house um, for a full day, and there are no places where employers have provided you somewhere to go to the loo, you're really stuck.
Mm.
You're you're kind of confined to your own small space.
And
And
a
it's never known
young family too. You'd be
exactly.
stuck,
Yeah.
wouldn't you? You're just trapped in
Yeah.
your home.
So everyone was really, you know, public toilets were just not really a thing until kind of late 1910s. And it's just something I'd not really considered.
No.
No,
But
that's really shocking.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Just, it's so normal now.
Mm.
absolutely. And although it is, it's then starting to become a worry now with access to public toilets, particularly for trans people, becoming such an issue, kind of almost feels like, in some ways, for some people, we're returning to access to toilets being a way of controlling people. And I find
Yeah.
that really frightening.
Yeah, it
Mm.
actually made me think about kind of segregation and things like that,
Yeah.
when toilets were segregated. And yeah, it's just unbelievable. But it makes sense that women did not work, therefore they didn't even think that they might need access to a bathroom.
Yeah.
And I was also thinking, what was the queue like for that one
Oh,
bathroom for lady?
And
Like, oh,
going to
and
the theatre now,
yeah,
and you still have that
yes,
issue. The
yeah.
queue for ladies' loos at a theatre is always ridiculous, and
yeah,
Mm. And also
life is
you
still not designed properly for.
no, and you don't just need to use the loo as a woman,
Yeah.
or someone who's having their period. So again, you would be completely stuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would you have to miss work, or just stay
Yeah.
at home?
Exactly. And then you
yeah.
start reading kind of fiction from the time, thinking, well, these references to headaches and things. Is that actually you can't leave the sofa because you've got your period? And because it's just not mentioned ever at
No.
all. And it's really, really interesting.
Mm. Yeah, that's really rocked me.
Yeah, me too.
No, but sorry to come on your podcast and talk about trauma.
No,
No, we
this
love
is
it. We're here
exactly the
for it.
content
Yeah.
that, no, this is us.
Yeah. Gosh.
So, talking about MI5, how did you find out about these? Because I never knew that. I never knew that they used
No,
children, especially for such highly confidential
yeah.
messages.
So I the it was just literally the original way I found out about it was half a page in this fabulous book, How the Girl Guides Won the War, which is all about um, guides and brownies throughout different kind of historical periods, but how they've kind of been used as a resource and volunteering. And it's a really, really interesting book. But that was the bit that stuck with me, that these girls um, were employed at MI5 because it seemed so unusual. And to make it actually even funnier as a guide leader, originally MI5 employed scouts. Um, and guides took over from scouts, partly because um, scouts, terrifyingly enough, were then employed to be coast watchers. So um, communicated with the Coast Guard around different kind of coastal areas of Britain, and also they were asked to guard telephone lines to stop them being tapped,
Wow.
and bridges, railway lines, anything. So effectively, like an extra version of the Home Guard,
Mm.
which wasn't a specific thing until the Second World War. But yeah, so quite frightening that the British government was making use of what were actually children. Um, but the other reason that the guides took over from scouts at MI5 was because it wasn't the kind of job where you were constantly busy. And apparently the boys just got bored and were too naughty.
Yeah, I can see
Shocking.
that.
um, and they also weren't great at keeping the messages secret. As a guide leader, there's this kind of comedy slight rivalry with Scouting, which is, the two organizations work really well together, and it's very affectionate kind of teasing, but
Mm.
um, there's a certain amount of kind of, yeah, we took over because you weren't very
Yeah.
good.
I love that.
So for me, that's really funny. Um, yeah.
Also, as a girl, you do have this sense of if you get trusted with a secret, then you are keeping that secret. It's like the utmost. You've been trusted with it, so that's what you're going to do.
Yeah,
Not that boys don't do that, but definitely I can see that being the most important thing that you are going to do with your day, and that is it.
absolutely.
Mm.
And just there was this sense that the girls were so excellent at this job, which was why it was so lovely to kind of go and get to kind of think about things that might go wrong and that sort of thing. But just there's a great pride for me in belonging to the organization um, that my characters belong to still, kind of over 100 years later, which is really lovely.
Mm.
Um, there are certain issues going on with girl guiding at the moment, which are very sad because unfortunately they made a decision at the end of last year to exclude trans girls,
Mm.
which I can understand why the decision was made, and it was to do with legal action. But um, it's I kind of, having been writing about these strong, determined, very principled children, I'm so sad that the organisation has kind of taken a step back from that sense.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's still an organisation that I have a huge affection for. So it's been great to write about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the age of the girls in the book, the
Mm.
14 years old, and also the scouts around that time as well, because I know as you say they use scouts and girl guides for sort of different jobs. When I live in Bedford, and during the First World War, there were thousands of Highland troops sent to
Mm.
live in Bedford, and they were billeted around the town. There was like 15,000, more than
Oh
that, I
wow.
think. There was
Wow.
thousands of them, and the scouts, when they arrived at the train station, the scouts showed them where they were living,
Yeah.
Oh,
which is a kind of job you would trust to scout with, I think, because it's
yeah.
sort of like, go on, let's go, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they would have known the area really, really well.
Yes.
Because there was much less for children to do at the time. So guiding and scouting, it wasn't just a case of kind of one meeting a week. There was a lot more going on, and it was
Mm,
a lot more self-organized as well than it is, partly because, you know, in some very much not a safer place in some ways, particularly with a war going on, but um, fewer cars
mm,
and a general more sense of children being allowed to be out by themselves. But they were kind of going off in groups and exploring by themselves. So scouts would have been perfect for showing people how to get to places because they
yeah.
would have known that area probably like the back of their hands.
And I just thought how the parents, or whoever is at home at that time, would be reacting to what's going on, and thinking about how I would feel if my 14-year-old was, enrolled in this really important part of what was happening. And of course, you can't imagine, because everybody was doing their part, weren't they? And
Yeah.
there would have been so many other worries and concerns at home, that because I just, oh no, is it safe? No, it's not. So I don't think you're ready for that yet. Is it, you'd have all these thoughts going through your head, but at the time I can imagine just this absolute sense of duty, and actually is that is your family as well. So if your children are kind of enrolled in this stuff as well, then you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, Baden Powell, who founded Scouting, was a soldier, and in some ways, Scouting and to a slightly lesser extent, Girl Guiding, they were quite militaristic organizations. They were very much a sense of um, that they were bringing up future leaders and probably also future soldiers, which is kind of sad to think of, and it's not something
Mm,
that's continued now, but there is still a sense of very strong um, duty to the community, I suppose. But duty sounds rather dismal, but a sense of belonging, being part of a community, and wanting to protect a community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
It's
know any of the messages that they were entrusted with? Did it ever become public record
No,
or?
there are a couple of really fantastic resources that I got to through the National Archives. So lots of the early kind of MI5 documentation you can read now online from the National Archives, which is fantastic because they're basically just digitized versions. And so you can see the photographs of the covers, and the covers literally do have secret stamped all over them. So that's there's a sort of thrill to it. And there were a couple of reports. There's one report particularly on women's work at MI5 from after the war, and there's a sort of layout of a document laying out all the different roles, and they talk about things like how much the girls were paid, and how much time off they were allowed, and what their duties were. But there's nothing. No, there's nothing about the messages, which is really sad. So I had to have to make all that up. But
Mm.
yeah, I did a lot of kind of research into MI5 history as yeah, and the kind of things they were investigating as well. But yeah, there has had to be a certain amount of extrapolation, just because I suppose nobody at the time thought it was important to record what those girls were doing because they were girls.
Yeah.
You know, that's possibly slightly an exaggeration, but um, yeah, but in a way that makes it really exciting because you can give them so many different.
Yeah.
So in the first book, they are sort of accidentally investigating, and they're mostly investigating because Phil, who's the main character, has come to the aid of one of the other women in the office, who's one of the officers who Phil's already kind of had a run in with. Is she finds him in the passageway trying to kiss her, and
Oh.
um, the older girl is fighting back, and Phil trips him up with an umbrella. So they've had a self-defense session at Guides. And one of the lovely things actually was writing these books was thinking about the guide leaders, so the captain and the lieutenant, as they were called at the time, um, who are suffragettes, both of them, and their lieutenant, Miss Fielding, is particularly keen on um, self-defense and suffragettes. I'd written books about suffragettes previously and found out that there was a whole group of suffragettes who were trained in jujitsu, partly to
Amazing.
protect Christabel Pankhurst, Mrs. Pankhurst, from the police when she was appearing at events. So she was kind of constantly at risk of being arrested. So they had these women trained to fight off the police, while wearing corsets and
Yeah.
shirts. Um, so my guide leaders have a suffragette background, and um, it I've loved kind of writing the guide meetings and thinking about trying to make them representative of the time, but also with a feminist kind of slant. And Miss Fielding has taught the girls how to fight off somebody who's trying to steal your handbag by sticking an umbrella between their feet and tripping them up. And Phil's kind of, we're never going to use this. This is ridiculous. And then she happens to be able to. Someone's abandoned an umbrella in the corridor. Major Warren is coming towards her and clearly about to kind of grab her. And so she trips him up with an umbrella. And he goes headfirst into the wall, into the skirting board, and it knocks him out. So she is slightly worried that she might actually have murdered him when he disappeared. She thinks he might have gone home and died.
Oh, right.
Right.
Okay.
So that's
Mm.
kind of an accidental mystery that they end up solving in the first book because they're trying to work out what's happened to Major Warren, and they realize there's a spy within a double agent within MI5. The second book, so they've originally been recruited to work at MI5 partly because their guide captain's brother works there, and he realizes that he's got this resource of these girls who are highly efficient, really good at going under the radar because they're just girls and nobody would expect them to be doing anything unusual.
Mm.
Um, and so he sends them undercover. So that it's starting to become more of a it's still not official, absolutely, but there's more kind of purposeful spying in the second book, which is, yeah, I've been really, they're a theatre as well, and I grew up loving books about theatre schools. I was a total Noel Stratfield addict, and lots of other theatre and dance books as well. So putting them in a theatre has been really funny.
Oh, that
Oh,
sounds good.
yeah.
I was just wondering, did anyone else ever go through an MI5 phase? Because I did.
Oh, I mean, I love spy stories, and yeah, just the whole concept of codes and lots of the kind of mysteries that I read growing up. I was a huge Dorothy L. Sayers fan as well, and there's a Dorothy L. Sayers book, which is all about what they think is a Russian spy. Um, and it's full of codes, incredibly complicated codes. And actually, that has been one thing that's slightly difficult for a girl's guide to spying, that I have to write about codes, which means I've got to get them right.
Yeah.
And the number of times I've gone through these bits about the codes, going, have I actually done this properly? And
Mm.
yes, it's still one of my worries that someone's going to write to me going, this doesn't make sense. You've done it
Yeah.
wrong.
See, that makes sense. That's what my MI5A should have been. But mine was actually just constantly going on the website to see if I wanted to apply for one of the desk jobs.
Oh.
Because you could do it. I mean, maybe it's still there. But then it was kind of like there was a little caveat on it about, you might be recruited to do such a thing and you can't tell people who you work for and all this. And I was like, oh, well, that's that then. I would never not be able to tell anybody. Or I couldn't keep a secret like that to save my life. Someone would go, MI5? And I'd be like, me? No, no idea what you're talking about. But I definitely went through that phase of like, ooh, wouldn't that be cool
Yeah.
to work somewhere like that?
Mm,
But I wouldn't relocate and can't keep a secret. So
not ideal.
no, not really.
But I mean, that was one of the things that I wondered about when I started thinking about this book, that what did they tell people about what they were doing? Oh, I just work for a government department. I'm just, a
Mm.
messenger delivering. I mean, they did work in other departments as well, and they worked in various kind of big companies like the Marconi Wireless Factory had guides as messengers as well. So there were others, but yeah, MI5 is the one that is most exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I just
So,
love the idea of being 14 and walking around and
yeah.
having these secrets and, delivering them. I would have kept a secret better then, to be fair, than now. My face gives me away now.
So did you say that this is a series, the Girls
Yeah.
Guide to Spying? So is it do you know how many there's going to be at this stage, or is it?
At least three, and I
Oh,
would love it if there were more.
yeah.
Um, I can definitely imagine there being more. So the second one is called Girl's Guide to Going Undercover, and it's set in a London theatre. Third one I haven't got a title for necessarily yet, and but I do vaguely know what it will be about, because at the time there was a an absolute panic about sabotage at arms factories, effectively about munitions factories. And I hadn't realized until I started researching the first book that, um, and in a way, I should have realized, because guides at the time, um, so they started mostly at 11, and when they first founded guides, there wasn't a top age limit where you went on to rangers, which is there is now. Um, it was more, there was a gradual move to becoming a leader once you got to kind of 14, 15, 16. But it wasn't just girls who were at school who were at guides. Girls who were in domestic service, so working as maids, could still be in guides. And there were actual guide companies formed within munitions factories. So girls who were working, filling shells or whatever else, would stop, take off their kind of covering overalls at the lunch break and have a guide meeting
Oh, okay.
in the lunch break, in their break from working at a munitions factory. And there were specific factory units, guide companies, which, and I haven't been able to find out very much about them, but it's, I just think it's something I find it really hard to get my head around, that,
Yeah.
opening shells or building weapons, working these huge machines, and then they stop and have a guide meeting.
I think it's quite lovely.
It is, it is.
Yeah.
It just makes you realize how young everybody was.
Yeah. It allowed
And the
them
fact
to
that
kind of be children for a minute, didn't
school
it?
leaving age was 12.
Wow. Oh, I
You
didn't know
could leave
that.
at 12. Not everyone did, but and that just, I find that you would effectively become an adult member of the working community
Mm.
at 12.
Wow.
And that's
No,
only 100 or so years ago.
Yeah, yeah, that's scary.
it is
It really
scary.
is.
Oh.
Yeah.
Um, uh, we always say this, but honestly, I feel like we could do another podcast and just hear from you talking about all of this because it is just it's fascinating. And obviously, I think most girls do go through brownies and move on to guides. So it's something that everybody can draw on their
I
experience, you
really
know,
hope
their
so.
own.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was a brownie. I wasn't a
I was.
guide, but I got into
Yeah.
theatre when I was about 11 or 12. And so I
Mm.
spent all of my, shockingly, spent all of my time dancing around and looking for attention. Um, so I never did guides, but I had friends who did it.
Mm.
It is just a staple of kind of British life as you grow up, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Mine are in brownies and beavers,
Yeah.
and
I think they're such um great ways of making friends and kind of being part of a local community and just having so much fun.
mm,
Yeah, huge supporter.
Yeah,
yeah. And we joined brownies after, well, rainbows, after COVID, and
Yeah,
it was like the perfect timing
yeah,
because it was very difficult, and especially when you have a very shy child.
yeah.
I think brownies again, it's a lovely, gentle group. So yeah.
yeah. And it allows children to meet people outside of their circle. So
Yeah.
again, when teaching, there's always a couple of kids who maybe don't find their people in the
Mm,
classroom. So, something like brownies or guides or scouts allows them to go and meet other people and hopefully find their people
Yeah.
in a bit of a different environment. So,
yeah.
yeah,
For
anything like
me,
that.
well, I mean, COVID obviously was so strange, but so we kept our Brownie and Guide units going online. We did Zoom meetings,
Mm.
which were kind of a mixture of totally wonderful and so difficult.
Yeah.
But the girls who started Brownies on Zoom, who became Brownies as part of our Zoom units during COVID, are now kind of 13, 14, and just getting to the stage of becoming young leaders and um, being our older guides. And that's it. Yeah, it's amazing having watched them grow
Mm.
from such a
Mm.
strange start.
Mm, yeah.
Well, I can't wait to read this book. I know I'm going to get it for my daughter. She's going to love it, and I think it'd be one of the ones that we read together, which is always nice. So
Oh, I love that.
yeah, yeah. Um, do you have time to read? Is there anything that you're reading at the moment and enjoying?
So actually, at the moment, I'm reading a book called Crooked Cross by Sally Carson, which is a Persephone Press book. So they do reissues of women's writing that's been forgotten and has been out of print. And this book was published in 1933, and it's basically about the rise of fascism in Germany, um, to the very beginnings. So 1930 to the end of 1932, beginning of 1933, when Hitler came to power. And reading it with kind of the political situation in the States at the moment is utterly
Mm,
terrifying.
mm,
It's I'm reading it because obviously I've got a huge interest, partly because of Girls Guide to Spying in um, history of the time. And one of the things that I've always found difficult reading books that are set around the First World War is realizing how little time there was between World War One and World War Two. And
Yeah.
particularly, I mean, I absolutely loved books like The Secret Garden and A Little Princess. And those were written just before the First World War. So the realization that all those characters would have lived through World War One, the boys would have had to go and fight, almost certainly, and then their children would have had exactly the same situation with the Second World
Oh,
War. And so there's this, it just feels like it's the most incredibly fragile, difficult time. And
Mm.
I've done a lot of reading around the time for this series and reading books that were written for children and thinking about these characters and thinking, oh, wow. So you're just about to go and have to fight, or you've just got through the First World War. Lots of them have a First World War setting, but it just seems like such a dark time and it's frightening,
Mm.
but fascinating at the same time. The
Yeah.
expectations that were put on young people at the time.
Mm.
well, it sounds like a very pertinent read for
Yeah,
now, which is unfortunate, but
This is why we read, because we need to remember all of this and
and be prepared and
yeah.
recognize and have that empathy and
Mm.
yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
I tend to read lots of books at the same time. So, like Relief, I'm also reading Catabasis, which is the new RF
Oh yes.
book, which is about descending into hell. So obviously, it's like
Yeah. How are you finding it? Is it because I believe I haven't read it? I've seen her speak and she's incredibly erudite and intelligent and intimidating.
yes, absolutely.
She's
I mean,
just,
I'm definitely getting the sense that there are an awful lot of references that I'm not picking up, but
yeah.
I really, really like it.
It's a bit Alice in Wonderlandy, I believe, with the
Yes,
play with language and a bit
yeah,
nonsense and
absolutely. And her previous book, Yellowface, was just
oh
so funny about publishing and
yeah.
Mm.
yeah, and also frightening in some
Yeah.
ways. But
That
yeah,
is one of my favorite books of the last 5 years, I
yeah,
think. And I
Yeah.
listened to the audio. Whoever did the audio was excellent. But I was on holiday and it was a bit of a sun lounger read. And I just kept gasping. And then we'd go for dinner that evening and I would just kind of rehash the plot so far to my husband.
yeah.
And every night he was quite looking forward to finding out the next installment of Yellowface because it was just, oh,
Mm.
brilliant. I loved that book.
I was going to ask you actually, Holly, if you didn't mind me asking, if there's, because obviously you've been doing this a long time and you've been writing, so that side of it, but also with the editing when you started with Scholastic, is there anything that, I mean, you've probably seen a lot of change since your career began, but is there anything that you think that has become easier or anything that has become much harder as an author? Or in
Yeah.
publishing in general.
I think one thing that has really changed for the better is there's less of a sense of boys' books and girls' books, which I think is something really good. Um, and there always seemed to be an expectation that girls were happy to read about boys, but boys would never read a book that was for girls. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
covers were so much more gendered
Mm.
at the time. And I think there's still obviously still a bit of that, but um, I think it's great that there is less of a sense of this is a book for boys and this is a book for girls. Um, I do think it's much harder for writers to get started. I mean, I was so lucky, and I have a huge sort of sense of how lucky I was, and I'm massively grateful. I was there, and all I had to do was put my manuscript on Jane's chair, and I feel
But
like
make sure it was a good manuscript though.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
there was some talent and
I do
as
feel like
well. But I know
top
what you
notch.
mean about being lucky.
And there's
Good
a really
timing.
interesting rise actually in publishing university courses and creative writing courses have become so
Mm.
much more popular. But it does in some ways mean that you get access through doing those amazing MA creative writing courses like the Bath Spa one. And that's really, really good. But you've got to be able to afford to do it.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I do think that's an issue. Amazing books have come
Yeah.
from those courses, which it's really fantastic. I worry, and I'm talking from a total position of privilege, having had the access to get my book in someone's hands, but I do worry about access.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm quite passionate about going into schools and saying, you know, I am a working class author. I grew up not knowing that an author was a real thing. You know, various different careers, and then just pure kind of determination and pig-headedness has kind of got me to where I am, and learning along the way. And, you know, I hope that I have some kind of talent for it.
I was going to say, and talent.
Yeah. But a lot of hard work. And, you know, you can't, but it's important to be told that. So, yeah, I think there are more people like me.
To write. So that sounds an awful way of putting it, but you are allowed to. It's not something that you've got to, you don't have to be special.
Yeah, it's for everybody. It's and that's definitely getting better. I think that people like me go into schools and say, hey, I had no idea, but you can. And hopefully that will, you know, bring about some people in the future going, oh gosh, I remember that person who came in, and maybe I could have a go as well. So yeah, I don't think it's as scary, but I do understand what you mean about I could never have afforded to do an MA, especially now when it costs, I don't know, 10 grand a year.
I almost did the equivalent of that by being an editor. I ended up being trained as a writer through being an editor, and that was accidental. But I think a lot of the same skills. And those courses are amazing. It is just money. It
is. Yeah, agreed.
I did when I got into writing and just suddenly decided I wanted to make my millions as an author, obviously. I did a course online through Oxford University, and it was only like a 6-week thing. And it was very, very cheap, but it taught me so much about the process and about structure, and it was a really excellent starting off point. And I think there's so many books and blogs and TikTok guys and, you know, people sharing their experiences and a little insight into that sort of thing. So I feel like that there is there are a lot of resources out there for people who want to.
It's more the access to agents and to publishers
that's it. Yeah, that's the tough bit.
Kind of conferring on people, which I think is possibly. I mean, as you say, you've still got to be good. The book has still got to be fabulous, and that's brilliant. I kind of wonder if there are people who are writing fabulous books who aren't getting that actor.
Yeah, probably. I think to the agents and publishers, definitely. And it's one of those that once you have your foot in the door, it's a very small community, and you meet people, and that will hopefully lead to another job in the future. Which is, I do always say, just be nice to everyone.
And that's what you said earlier.
No harm in it.
It is, you know, it's really important. I mean, we should be nice to everybody.
We are nice anyway,
but you know, it is a business, isn't it? And you need to think that this person that you're in a meeting with right now could be somebody you're working with 10 years down the line. So that is really, really excellent. You know, an excellent point to make. Just
and
always
actually, I suppose the kind of counterbalance to writing courses, there's huge kind of explosion of people self-publishing, and that's something that I have massive respect for, because it takes so much
hard work,
confidence, ability to put yourself out there, things that I find quite tricky. And then, you know, lots of these books are then being picked up by traditional publishers, which is really, it's a really interesting model that
it's happening a lot more.
Editor, 20 or so years ago, just wasn't something that happened.
No. Yeah, we could do a whole other podcast on the trend of that, couldn't we? But for now, Holly, where can people find you? Do you have a presence online that people could visit?
So I have a website, which is hollywebb.com, and I'm also on Instagram. I used to absolutely love Twitter and waste so much time on Twitter, and I miss Twitter. I'm probably most active on Instagram now.
Okay, everyone says exactly the same thing about Twitter everyone calls it Twitter because that's what writers. But that's what we all knew it as, and that's what we loved it as. And
book Twitter was just the best way to waste a morning when you should be writing.
Yeah, definitely. I know. What do we do without it?
I know. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's just been fascinating. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, it's been
Oh,
lovely.
thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me. And it's just nice to get to chat to people for
It is, and there's nothing authors love more than talking about the books that they've invented out of their
and the
brain.
random bits of weird research. So yeah,
Exactly. It's brilliant. So thank you very much, and we'll see you
thank you.
soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, Holly. Bye.
Bye.
Browser history deleted.